The Great Rift was not simply a scar of light in the void. It was a wound in reality, a gash of impossible scale that split the galaxy in two. From its bleeding edge poured tides of unreality, raw warp storms that clawed at every world they touched. The cicatrix maledictum became both beacon and abyss, a burning reminder that the galaxy itself had been torn open. What followed in its wake was an age the Imperium would call the Psychic Awakening. At first, it seemed like madness. Entire planets reported mass hysteria, millions of people collapsing as visions seared their minds, or screaming in unison as invisible fires consumed them from within. On hive worlds, latent psykers erupted overnight, their uncontrolled power igniting districts, toppling manufactoriums, and sending billions into panic. Ships navigating the void discovered their astropaths overwhelmed by voices, some speaking in tongues never heard before, others shrieking until their minds cracked. The Imperium had always feared the psyker, but never before had humanity witnessed such a sudden, simultaneous ignition of psychic force. Every man and woman with even the faintest trace of potential felt the warp press upon their soul. In some, it bloomed as miraculous power, healing, foresight, the spark of battle fire. In others, it rotted into madness, demonic possession, or burning cascades that turned whole cities into psychic pyres. The Emperor's black ships, once grim harvesters of sanctioned psykers, could not keep pace. Their holds overflowed, their crews consumed, their missions undone before they could even begin. The Imperium's enemies were not idle. The sons of Magnus, the Thousand Sons, seized upon the chaos to further their own designs. Across demon worlds and hidden sanctums, sorcerers enacted rituals of ascension, pulling warp storms into living crowns, merging flesh and spirit in blasphemous unities. For them, the awakening was not disaster, but opportunity, the proof that the age of sorcery had dawned in full. They struck at imperial worlds with phalanxes of rubric marines, supported by sorcerous hosts whose powers eclipsed even the greatest sanctioned psykers. But the Thousand Sons were not alone in answering the call. Among the fractured remnants of the Aeldari, ancient seers felt the cry of their god-to-be, Ynnead. The Ynnari preached that the psychic awakening was a sign. The death god stirred, and with him came the chance to save their fading race. Craft worlds divided, some embracing the Ynnari creed, others condemning it as heresy, but all felt the surge of psychic intensity. The skeins of fate shifted wildly, strands tangling faster than even the most gifted farseers could unravel. For the Aeldari, every breath became a choice between doom and salvation. The Orks, brutish and unpredictable, discovered their own response to the warp's convulsions. Weirdboyz, already dangerous conduits of psychic energy, began to explode with unprecedented violence. Entire walls were fueled not just by the roar of green fury, but by crackling storms of psychic lightning. Some Weirdboyz burned out in seconds, their heads bursting like overripe fungus, but others grew terrifyingly strong. An orc horde led by such a creature became more than an army. It became a living tempest rolling across star systems in a tide of green fire. The awakening had given the orcs new toys, and they would smash them across the stars. Even the Tyranids, alien beyond comprehension, shifted in response to the warp's convulsions. Their height fleets, always adaptable, began to display new patterns of psychic resonance. Shadow in the warp deepened, smothering entire sectors in oppressive silence.
creatures bred with new abilities, synaptic nodes that pulsed with alien thought, beast swarms that hunted psykers with terrifying precision. Wherever the Tyranids approached, human astropaths fell dead in their chairs, their skulls ruptured by pressure from a mind vast and unhuman. For the Imperium, this was no mere awakening of their own kind. It was the stirring of every predator in the galactic jungle. And still the storms spread. On shrine worlds, visions of saints grew violent and contradictory. Some wept blood, proclaiming salvation near, while others screamed in the Emperor's name for purges so vast they threatened to erase whole populations. On Furge worlds, machine spirits grew restless, Vox networks alive with garbled binary that sounded more like prayer than signal. Even the Adeptus Mechanicus could not deny that the warp pressed against their logic engines, whispering through every line of sacred code. Within the Imperium, responses fractured as surely as the warp itself. Some saw the psychic awakening as proof of the Emperor's guiding hand, a holy fire meant to ignite humanity's next stage. Prophets arose on distant worlds, their words backed by visions so powerful that millions followed them into rebellion or pilgrimage. Others saw only corruption, calling for witch hunts of unprecedented scale. The Inquisition, ever divided, split further. Some ordos sanctioned the use of these new powers, while others declared extermination the only path to survival. For Roboute Guilliman, Lord Commander of the Imperium, the awakening was both nightmare and necessity. His Indominus crusade had already stretched the Imperium's strength to breaking, yet he now faced a galaxy where every conflict was twisted by psychic fire. He ordered the training and sanctioning of new cadres of psykers, some woven into the ranks of Primaris formations, others bound in chains to be unleashed only in extremis. Guilliman knew that refusing these powers meant extinction. Embracing them, however, risked opening the Imperium's heart to the warp. It was a gamble even he could scarcely control. The demons of chaos feasted. Every flare of power became a beacon, every awakening soul a doorway. Warp rifts blossomed across battlefields, disgorging horrors into the mortal plane. The armies of Khorne howled with joy at so much blood, whilst Tzeentch's laughter echoed through the tides of sorcery. Slaanesh fed on the ecstasy and terror of sudden transcendence, while Nurgle welcomed each collapse into despair as if into a festering embrace. The warp had always hungered, but now it was drowning in its banquet. And yet, for all the horror, the awakening was not without hope. Some psykers found new strength that saved worlds, shielding them against demonic onslaughts. Some Aeldari, guided by Ivrain and the whisper of Ynnead, glimpsed a future where their race might endure. Even among the Imperium's broken sectors, stories spread of miracle workers whose visions spared billions from annihilation. It was a time of fire, yes, but also of possibility. The Imperium named it the Psychic Awakening because they had no other words for the storm. It was not one war, not one crusade. It was a shattering of limits, the tearing open of every soul in the galaxy to the breath of the warp. For some, it meant glory. For most, it meant death. For all, it meant that the galaxy would never again be what it had been before the rift opened. The galaxy was aflame, not only with the fire of war, but with the fire of the warp itself.